episode 43 of the Bithell Games Podcast. I'm Alexander Slawinski.
And I'm Mike Bithell.
Each week, we talk games, what it's like to make games, and the random stuff we don't generally find time to talk about because we are playing and or making games. Show note. Volume Coda, out now. PlayStation VR. If you have Volume for PlayStation, it's there. It's a free download.
But what do they have to do if they want to play it, Alexander?
Make sure your PlayStation VR is on.
When you boot up the game.
Please.
Yes, that has been... I kind of want to make an auto Twitter replier for that question. It's the code that basically detects that this system's there, runs at the start of the game as you'd expect. So yeah, you can't kind of boot into it later. But people seem to be digging that. I'm getting lots of lovely messages, which is really nice.
I'm actually really happy with how people have been enjoying it. I do like the questions of like, well, can I play this first? And then definitely want to play the normal game first, and then go into Coda.
I feel like it's best played as a secondary activity after the main game, and definitely from a story perspective, it continues the narrative on. I wouldn't say that it was too spoiler. I mean, it's a continuation of the story, but I don't think it ruins the. I think you could play them the other way around, and it would just. But yeah, I think it's
just context.
Yeah, exactly. You don't know who these characters are. You don't know why they're doing what they're doing. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah. So you got yourself 30 more levels, more story, and there you go. So enjoy that, PlayStation VR, folks. What have you been playing?
What have I been playing? I've not been playing a lot, to be honest.
Well, then I'm going to say what I've been playing.
You got loads. Go for it. Go on.
I've been playing Battlefield 1.
Oh, is it great? Is that out? I need to play it.
It is hot. It is.
Is it really?
It's really good. It is. It's the continuation of Bad Company. It is. I will state that. It is. It is.
Buying it after this.
If you enjoyed Bad Company, that's where Battlefield 1 takes it. The menus are a garbagey hot mess. Like, just the war. Like, it's bad, but the game feels good. Squatting up with your friends, oh my god, so easy. You just get into a party with your friends and start a game, and the game goes, hey, your friend is joining a game. Would you like to join them? Yes, I would. And it goes right into it. Say that server is full. Okay. It cues you in there, and then when it's ready, it drops you into the squad with your friend. It's magical. It's like it's the Battlefield experience that Bad Company promised, and you know, with Bad Company, you'd go into the menu, you'd get your friends together, you'd all squad up, and then you go into the game, and by later on in Bad Company's life, you know, you could squad up, go into the game together, and it would work. It was still, you know, very messy at first. But Battlefield 1, no. It just does it. And then if your friends join, this is like, cause if you're a Battlefield player, like, this is just magical, because the entire point of Battlefield is to play with your friends. And so your friend joins your party, bam, it puts you right into the squad with them.
I just moved to a part of London where I can get the like Amazon Prime 1 hour deliveries, and I swear to goodness, the second we're off this podcast, I'm ordering it, because I'd forgotten it was coming out. I love, like, Bad Company, I adored, so I can't wait. Have you played this much the single player campaign? Because that tends to be my main experience with these games.
So I have not played the single player campaign. I've heard good things about it. By good things, meaning that it is not the past couple single player experiences, which were trying to emulate another major franchise. That's the thing here. It's not trying to emulate that other franchise anymore. Like,
that's good. It's being its own thing. It's being Battlefield.
Yes.
Right.
And that's good.
Let Battlefield be Battlefield.
Please let Battlefield be Battlefield. And yeah, Rush is back, where you have to get to 2 objectives or defend the 2 objectives. And if you lose those, there's another round further on in the map, and there's another round further on the map. In the prior couple Battlefields, again, hot garbage. In this version, nope, works really well. Conquest, so you've got your rush, that's working really well. You've got conquest, that's lovely as always. It's a good Battlefield game, and I'm looking forward to playing much more of it.
Nice. I'm going to own it within the next 2 or 3 hours, I think.
Yeah. And then the other game I've been playing is Civilization 6.
You've been enjoying this one. You've been talking about this a little bit.
So I haven't played enough to really talk about it, but it definitely moves things forward. It is accessible. I think it takes on some of the criticisms that were there for the beginning of Civ 5. I really enjoy the art style. It is the art director from Civilization. Was he the art director? The person who is in charge of the art style of Civilization Revolutions is the art director on Civilization 6.
It's got an almost cartoony style,
yes.
Right? Like I've seen some of the character designs. Yeah.
It's a very cartoony style, but it fits. There are interesting things that it's done with your cities. So now you make separate districts. So it actually takes on one of the weirder elements of Civilization, where if you were sort of like me, where you just played the game but you weren't completely diving into, you know, reading Reddit threads and everything like that, one of the elements that the game always tried to have you do is specialize your cities. So you would have your science city, or you would have your production city, or something along those lines. But it never really gave you a clear reason for doing that if you were a more casual player. And in this one, you create specific districts, and then your districts get filled with science buildings or entertainment buildings, or, you know, various things. And it works really well. It's logical, and it is the thing that will make people finally understand how to specialize cities. And yeah, I'm still really early on in it, but it's been a really good week. Like,
sounds really cool.
Like you've got Civilization in one corner, and you've got Battlefield in the other, and they're both serving the people who are interested in those games really, really well. Now it's time for what's going on at the studio. Boy, big week.
Yeah, very busy.
We have EarthShape for Daydream, which we announced very recently. Mm-hmm. It is in the pre-launch final. Do we even call it gold anymore? What is it called nowadays?
So I mean people do still call it gold. Obviously that's derived from the old days of discs. Yeah, I guess you could say gold. I'm always very worried about saying the second you say something's finished, it's that old classic thing of the second you call a file final, you've doomed it to not be the last version. Everything's always the final. No, really, this is final 3. So yeah, but I would say principal production is now over on EarthShape. Mm-hmm. That's probably... there'll be there's still lots of things we have to do to make it work as great as it can on Daydream. And there's also, obviously this is a new platform, so there's lots of new things being kind of rolled on. But yeah, it's in a really, I think a really solid place now. And yeah, we're both, I think, really proud of it, right? I think it's a good game, which is always what you're aiming for.
And we can say that we've brought someone on board to support it going forward.
Yeah, we can say that now.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah,
I mean, paperwork signed. So
the paperwork signed. So yeah, we've got Nick Tringali joining us, which is really cool. He's been someone who's worked on everything since Volume. So he came on Volume and did some kind of additional 3D art on that project. He did some of the environmental stuff. He was great. Since then, worked on EarthShape and has worked on a few different things since then as well. Like, he's just always been a very, very cool chap, based in America. We've always worked with him as a freelancer, but yeah, he's also a developer, so he's going to be jumping in and helping us with some EarthShape stuff going forward. So, as with a lot of games, we're planning about a year of kind of updates and tweaks, hopefully, on that, and he's going to be the one doing that stuff. So yeah, it's exciting to be having him working with us on a fuller basis, because he's always been someone who's worked in bits and pieces. We've always had him come in to just kind of do little jobs every now and again. But I think he's going to do really well. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's also interesting because this will be our sort of first studio project that after the title is out, we need to take into account, how does the audience, react to it? What are they interested in? And incorporating those thoughts and considerations into, the longevity of the game.
I think it's a very interesting case here that, when you're making a game like this, which is kind of a technological kind of forefront on mobile devices, it's not one launch. We're very used to, August 18th, 2015 was Volume's launch, and that was the big day, and that was what everything was built around. With EarthShape, in theory, there's going to be multiple kind of moments where people can jump in because the hardware's coming out, but also just, people buy phones at their own leisure and at their own schedule. So, there's always going to be this rolling new audience coming in. So it makes a lot of sense to make sure the game is still alive and doing its thing kind of going forward. It's an interesting way of working. I think we've made the very cool core of a game, and I'm looking forward to seeing where we get to over the course of the year. I think Nick's going to do some amazing stuff.
1, 2, 3. I want to thank you for reading the freedom mail again. Thank you for reading the freedom mail again.
All right, so first off, a little bit of follow-up. Hi, guys. You very kindly addressed my question on one of your podcasts, so I thought I'd give you some feedback. You don't need 2 eyes for PlayStation VR to work. With just 1 eye, the effect is the same as in real life, equals a slightly reduced field of view, but the sense of immersion is still there. I had expected to find problems with depth perception, as I sometimes do in real life, but that's not the case. I think I'm as good at Danger Ball, which was part of PlayStation VR Worlds, with 1 eye, as I would have been with 2. Great product and great fun. I have also finally bought Volume, a decision made not because of the VR Coda edition, but because it's now available on Vita. Thanks. Still enjoying the podcast a great deal. Thanks for that too. Best regards, Colin M. So what I liked about this email is not only was it a follow-up to a previous email we had regarding how VR works,
how it would work for folks with partial sightedness, which I think we got right. I think that was what we said, right? That it would be quote unquote as good as the experience he had in the real world in terms of immersion. So yay, go us.
And the second reason I like it so much is the Vita statement, because it goes back to what you just said, which was people come along at different times in a game's life, and this is so difficult to sort of wrap your brain around, because Volume is only a year old at this point. And even looking at something like Thomas was this progression, right? I
still see someone on Twitter most days, because obviously I have searches for like Thomas Was Alone on mentions on Twitter. I still see someone most days going, has anyone heard of this new game, Thomas Was Alone? Like, I see that every few days, and it is always someone's first moment, and yeah, we're seeing that with Volume. We're definitely seeing it with Thomas over its lifetime. These are, if you treat the game well, and we do with Volume, we're making new stuff for it with Coda. We're ensuring that it's supported on all the platforms. And, the great thing with Volume as well, of course, is the user-generated stuff. So there's always that new content coming in from the community too, which is great. So I think, it's if you take it seriously, then we've found, Volume's doing very well over its tail and continuing to find an audience. I think people still think of games as being about that first week, and they are, on some level, that's very important. But yeah, I'm really happy with how Volume's kind of performed and how it's found an audience over its lifetime.
Independent development has also always been about the long tail as well,
for sure.
More so than AAA. So
we're not fighting over shelves as much,
right? So I see something like that, and it's just like now that it's on Vita. It's been on Vita since January, right? And but that's great because someone has discovered it now. And then, I should have put this in the show note. I'll definitely put it in the show note for next week. But we also announced Limited Run Games' Volume Vita is going to be going on sale November 4th, he said.
Just before my birthday. So that'll be a birthday present for us. And Thomas Was Alone, of course, is coming to GameStop.
Oh, that's right.
Either.
I really should have put these both in the show.
In your defense, we are releasing a lot of boxes in the next couple of months. That's going to be fun. So that's the Steel Box, PC version, that one. Which is just, that's on the list of kind of childhood dreams for me to have one of my games on a shelf at GameStop. So that's very cool.
And now it's going to happen.
Yay!
Hi, Mike and Alexander. I've only started listening to the podcast a month or so ago and haven't had time to go through the old episodes, so I apologize if this has been discussed before.
They weren't very good, so that's fine.
I've been doing some off and on writing of articles and interviews for, not going to say the outlet, this year, and had some questions regarding interviewing developers. Since what I'm doing is more on the side of volunteer and hobbyist writing, there isn't any pressure besides what I put on myself to meet an article quota. Since I'm not aiming for a quota, I can be more selective with the sort of interviews I pursue, and I try to make each one interesting for the reader and developer. I research the questions that have been asked already and try to avoid those. Anyway, I guess my question is this. As developers and a former journalist, what advice do you have on conducting interviews? I suppose I should mention that the ones I have done so far have just been over email, with me sending the questions in bulk and them sending their answers back. Part of me is worried that this may seem impersonal, but I also don't want to take up too much of their time. Thanks, and keep up the fantastic work, Spencer S. So I'm going to take the first hit on this one.
You absolutely should, yeah.
At Joystick, we had a policy, no email interviews. This is very much ingrained in the DNA of that site. So the reason for that was it is very easy if you're a journalist to tell if an interview was conducted by email or if it was conducted in person, because the way the questions are answered and the lack of follow-up. So when you ask someone a question and they say something and it's really weird, in an email interview, they just go right on to the next question. That's how you can tell. Whereas if you were there in person and someone said something really weird as their answer, there would be a follow-up question to that. There would be something along those lines. Now, you do see people who are good at email interviews then follow up with some follow-up questions. But for the most part, it does have this very plain feel to it. And it doesn't... I don't know. It's not the way I like to do interviews. In terms of, that's my big one. My big one is if you can avoid doing email interviews, that's it. In terms of taking up their time, that's part of the gig. If you're starting to make a name for yourself or you're getting out there, then people will make the time for you. And we're talking about 10, 15 minutes. Just make sure that it's well researched and you're on point. I mean, I've certainly had a couple laughs being on this side where someone contextually does not know me at all anymore. And I find that fascinating because genuinely you can just Google me and bam, there you go. There's plenty of information on me.
I actually as well, just to add, I think that's all really good. I think I definitely prefer voice interviews as well as a developer. It's funny when you say you don't want to take up the time. I actually find replying to email questions to be a more frustrating and slow experience. I think I just enjoy being in conversation more. So, I will usually, if asked for an interview or for a comment on something, I'll just ask them to add me on Skype and we'll do a quick chat.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's the right way to do it. You can totally get a person on Skype. It doesn't have to be phone. It can be Skype. And I mean, everyone is on Skype. So,
or something else, right? Like Google Chat or whatever. Like I kind of I think that's, for me, that's a more natural, enjoyable way of talking, and you get to connect with a person and talk to them and learn some stuff from them as well. So I find that much more. I get, if I just get like email interviews, I'll often just kind of not want to do them because it's just a boring process to sit in front of a computer and write answers. And I always worry, like, are the answers too long? Are they too short? It's a bit more work for you to do to transcribe a Skype conversation or a real life interview. But I think you will also get more interesting stuff, I think, right? Is that true? Like, I'm much more off the cuff there's definitely been times where I've read an interview that I've given via Skype and I've just read a sentence, I've gone, did I say that? I guess I did, because this is a good journalist and they're not making stuff up. And it's just like, I definitely am more candid and looser.
Oh, news always comes from in-person.
Well, in an email, you read
interviews.
it back, right? You read it back in an email and you go, oh, no, I can't say that. That could be misconstrued as me saying X, Y, Z. Or, oh, I didn't mean to say that. That gives something away. Whereas in voice, like, you take a bigger risk. You say something silly that you later regret. And goodness knows I've done that a few times. So I think you might get much more interesting interviews, I think, doing voice. But as Alexander says, the big thing there is preparation. It's just being sure that, well, it sounds like, honestly, from the initial email, it sounds like you're doing your research, you're aware of things. I love the idea of researching what that person's been asked before. I swear to God, if I have to answer the "why did you make a game about rectangles" question again, and I will, I'm gonna lose it. There's definitely being interesting to the person you're interviewing by asking them stuff that they've never been asked about, or that they maybe don't even have an answer for yet. That you're giving them an opportunity to come up with something new is a great thing.
Well, it's also weird because the system reboots every 4 or 5 years, where you start getting the next generation coming back in. So they're asking all the questions that were already asked, 4 or 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago. But
you mean on the press side, right? That kind of cycle of journalists coming in.
No, I'm talking about the audience as well. Like,
oh, right, okay.
I mean, what we are going to see at some point in the not too distant future is YouTuber journalists. Like,
I think we're already seeing some.
Yeah.
Super Bunny Hop, for example, that kind of person doing really great work. And
they're percolating, but I still wouldn't call them players. Like, they're definitely not go-to, like, super, like, industry respectable folks. And what we're gonna see is those folks percolating in, and then they're going to ask a lot of the same sort of questions, or go down sort of the road that the print or online the print folks did it before, then the online folks did it, and then we're going to see it from the YouTubers. But it's a different audience every time, so the history keeps churning on itself. I can't wait, like, genuinely, like, I can't wait until I start seeing some of these YouTuber news folks popping up, and they're like covering stuff that was from sort of my era of news coverage, and just seeing like, okay, how are they going to present that? Like, what's, like, I was there, I went through it, so I'm curious to see what that's like, and that's a curiosity for me.
Well, I think the audience is going to demand this. You're seeing a lot of the kind of the places that were doing what I would call the serious kind of games journalism of finding stuff out, or challenging authority, all the stuff that's really important from journalism. A lot of those guys aren't there anymore. There's still a few waving the flag, definitely, but like it feels like there's definitely a gap for people to step into and do great work.
Yeah, I'm not going to name names on the show, but we've lost 4 or 5 good people in the last 2 to 3 months who are moving on to different prospects, and yeah, they're trying to fill in those spots, but I'm not seeing those folks. I would genuinely like to see, like you said, Super Bunny Hop is a great example of someone who's doing feature sort of content, which is interesting because feature content is not does not get traffic on regular websites.
And he's taking it really seriously, though. The recent piece he did on false advertising, and I think the title was like "Are Bullshots Illegal?" or something, and it opened with, "Well, no, they're not," and here's the legal definition. Like he'd done his work, he'd done his research.
He did a real good job with Konami too, like a little while.
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. Way back with the Kojima stuff, and. He's doing that, but like you say, that's features rather than news. You are seeing there is more news on YouTube, though, definitely. In terms of mainstream stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised, like a really awesome YouTube news channel at some point will come up. But I also don't think the written word's dead. I think there's going to be these opportunities in that. But yeah, anyway, we've completely tangented, but that was fun. Spencer, do your research, talk to people directly, and you'll get better stories. And then finally, hi, Mike and actually, it's hi, Alexander and Mike. Oh, wow, I got a first place. No, unacceptable. Yes. Unacceptable, guys. If I'm in parentheticals next week, I'm gonna lose my mind.
It's gonna burn the house down.
Exactly. The podcast is over the second that happens. I will not go quietly into the night.
Do you believe that any press is good press? Or to be more precise, do you think that for a game, negative press is still better than no press at all? Best regards, Andre. I would like to quote Oscar Wilde on this one. There is only one thing in life worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about.
I disagree with both you and Oscar Wilde on this one. I think there's absolutely bad press. I think we see this regularly in the games industry. It can spoil careers. It can be. How many conversations have me and you, Alexander, had privately while we're watching someone screw up on Twitter, for example, or just completely get it wrong in terms of communication? I think bad publicity is definitely bad. It's generally, I would say that people who feel otherwise have maybe not been the brunt of, because there's definitely layers to this, right? There's bad publicity, which is, hey, people don't dig your game. Fair enough. But there's also, we've definitely seen cases of people who've burned a lot of bridges with both the audience and the press and other developers and stuff like that. They can come back, and many have, and have had successful kind of second lives. But it's not easy, and it takes a lot of work. So no, I disagree. I would rather people didn't talk about me than that they hated me. I think that's definitely better career-wise.
I think you hit it when you're saying engagement. So I like to use, the John Travolta would be an old school example, but I like to use someone like Gillian Anderson as a more recent example of someone who, was famous. She was on the X-Files, and then, she didn't go away. Like if you look at her IMDb, like she's been working. Yeah, she had certainly been working. But in very recent years, she's very much back. She's very much back again between Hannibal and The Fall. And then the new X-Files, but that's sort of, but between Hannibal and The Fall, she was great. She was back. And I certainly expect to see her, be in more stuff again. And that's
not possible if she'd been the center of a major outrage at the end of X-Files, right? You have to, or maybe it's possible, but it's much harder to do. I think the key thing with any kind of celebrity from someone like Travolta or Gillian Anderson right down to kind of e-celebs like us, right, who, relatively known in certain circles, if you want a long career, it's
sort of what happens to you, though. Like Robert Downey Jr. is a good example of someone.
You go up and down. Up and down.
And then you certainly hit rock bottom. But ask any person under a certain age, who Robert Downey Jr. is, and they go, "Oh, he's Iron Man," and it's just like, sure. You have no context of he had a rough time there for. He
did, but what he did was he staged a miraculous comeback, right? And that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen often. And I don't think you could make the argument that he got the Iron Man role because of the controversy, right? He kind of got it in spite of it. I think that's the big thing here is bad publicity is bad publicity. And it is something that you have to solve and come back from. But no, I think it's, I think something that you realize, I can speak from experience here. Definitely there have been times where I'm, more in the nerdy eye. I say nerdy eye rather than public eye because the public doesn't give a crap. But like, there have been times where I've been more visible, times where I'm not the story for a while, and times where I have been, and it's kind of, you bounce back and up and down. And I could definitely, I'm sure I could get more notoriety if I was a little bit more controversial, but I don't want that, and I don't want to have to overcome that hurdle. So I think for me, no, bad publicity is bad publicity. It's never good.
I think that's where it's interesting though. Fame is a drug, and
I think people want it, so they actively, and you see this all the time, right? You from everywhere up to presidential elections, but you definitely see, people who clearly crave attention and crave being seen, and yeah, negativity is a great way of doing that.
If you have a burning question about games, game development, or just about the complexities of the universe, you can send those questions to us via contact@BithelGames.com. That's contact@BithelGames.com, through the YouTube comments of this show, or on Twitter by pinging @MikeBithell, @Slewinski, or @VolumeGame. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bithell Games Podcast. We can always use your support, so please provide reviews and 5 stars on iTunes, likes and subscribes on YouTube, and positive reinforcement on whatever other platforms you're hearing the show on whenever possible. This podcast was produced by Jonathan Downen. We'll be back next week pointing out that, we've got a bunch of stuff that I should have put in show notes. I'm Alexander Slewinski. Thanks again, and get in the last word, Mike.
Peri peri.